I'm Pastor Steve. We're just going to take a couple of minutes to talk about the Apostle John, who he was, how he lived, what we can maybe figure out about him. Now, first of all, none of this that I'm going to tell you is absolutely definitive. These are suppositions that we form by going through the scriptures and seeing what we can tell about the Apostle John. First thing in reading the Gospel according to John is that 5 times he is referred to as the disciple whom Jesus loved, whom he kept close to his breast. That is a description of the author of the 4th Gospel. Now, I have worked with those scriptures and also the scripture where John is standing with Mary and the other women by the cross or near the cross when Jesus is crucified. I also look at the scripture where John runs to the empty tomb upon the news of Mary Magdalene, and he runs faster than the apostle Peter. And then at the end of the gospel, where there is a commentary made about him and his ministry, where it is suggested that he will remain until Jesus returns. Jesus basically says to Peter, look, if he is to stay here until I come again, what is that to you? Now, from that, I have formed an assumption. And that assumption is that John was probably the youngest of all the apostles. He was probably just barely old enough to be out with the other men doing the work that was required of them at that time. Now, with John being younger, he was just young enough that when Jesus was crucified, he could go back with the women and be right there with the women. The other apostles could not do that. They were wanted men, and they had to hide during the time of the crucifixion. Now, my assumption is that John, in the time of Jesus, was the youngest of all the apostles, and that he lived longer than any of the others, surviving into old age, and therefore his lifespan covered most of the 1st century of the Common Era, that John actually lived longest. Now, the important thing to realize about the Apostle John, he made the crossover. The crossover is the difference between Jesus as an Essene zealot on fire for the Jewish law, as we see early in John's gospel when he goes into the temple and cleanses the temple, and they actually even quote Psalm 69, which says, "Zeal for thy house has consumed me." So this is Jesus as a law-following, law-teaching Jewish Essene, right on through till after the resurrection. Commenting on after the resurrection, John is the one who says that there were many other things that Jesus said and did. If all of them were written down, the world would not contain the books that would be written. So John covered the whole picture from the very beginning, well, not from the nativity, but from the time of Jesus's earthly ministry through his death and into the rising again, and that Jesus stayed on for a while teaching and offering his teachings to the others who were around at that time. So that's just a short thumbnail sketch of John the Apostle.